Okay, hello again. This is Philip, thebest3d.com, and I just came across this little experiment and thought I would share that. This is on the topic of how to create some interesting looking starry clouds, gas nebula, where there's a lot of, how shall we say, the sort of transitions from sort of a light glow to a dark cloud. And I thought that this one was really interesting. If I store this one quickly, I want to show you how I got to that. Let me do an undo one level. This was a little bit less contrasty, so obviously I adjusted the contrast there a little bit. Let's take a snapshot of that. So there's this one. Let's go back even more. There was a colored version of that, all right? So that was one of the tricks with that. So I'm going to go and store that one as well. And I think that was basically it. Yep, it started from a blank image right there. So what I did is I went to Filter, Render, Plasma Noise. We've seen this one a lot, right? We've used this a lot, but by default it's in this two-tone mode, black and white, or grayscales, and it's usually in opaque mode. And that's already an interesting start, but I did this thing here. I went to the HSV, Hue Saturation Value mode, and you get these kind of clouds. Now, whether you're in difference mode or in something else may also have an impact. And then you change the size a little bit and click this slider a few times until you have an interesting set of contrast in colors, a variety of colors, and then OK that. So this is a starting point. Let's go take a snapshot of that. That should be part of the workflow now. And the next thing I did is expose this through a color lens to turn it into grayscale. So there is this image grayscale expose through lens. And what you want to do is select some of these, go through that and see where do you get an interesting look. For instance, look at this area here. All right, this entire area here. As you go to red, it doesn't look too interesting. You go to blue, you have a little bit more of glow showing, green, cyan, something like this, right? And copy that. All right, so we have an interesting nebula here with some bright glowing lights behind it. Maybe there is a birthplace of new stars. So let's go and store that, and then go to the filters to adjust the contrast. Now there's a couple of places to do that. The value filter has quite a bit of value, pun intended. It's very valuable in adjusting that, making it brighter, saturation, or darker, even darker, and adjust a little bit on your gamma. So that one would be useful if you want to have sort of a dark look, right? And then you can always go back to the image and say expand dynamic range. And so here we have some interesting ways. Oops, and hold on, let me right click on that and store that. Shame on me for not storing that. Okay, so we have a snapshot here. The other thing I could also do is the filter. That's the curve. That one is a very valuable filter too, because with that you get to reset and then just use one handle to go either bright saturation or anywhere around here, give it a bit more darkness and even more. So you see how you can play with that to create very nice depth perception and color range or brightness range. And then of course you can remap that to different colors, right? So let's say for instance I wanted that to be mostly kind of a bluish tint for the dark side and a little bit of a pink reddish tint for the bright side. So I'm going to go first take a snapshot of course here, and then looking at the sweep editor or gradient. I like the sweep editor, so I'm going to go not from black to white in terms of this grayscale gradient. I'm going to go a little bit more bluish at the beginning, which means I need to reduce the green and the red components. So I'm going to stay a little bit below on the red a little bit longer, and same with green, even more perhaps so, right? And then on the blue, on the other hand, I might want to reduce the blue towards the end so it doesn't reach all the way to the high blue value. So you see how you have sort of a transition now. That green should probably go away. something like this. Right, okay, so now we need to remap this gradient, and that's done with the filter, color, map to current gradient. And there you go. So now that's a good starting point, but maybe you didn't need it that saturated. You can always do the interactive undo right there, this little arrow, slide it back and forth, go a little bit between the two. You can also do a few other things, such as combine this with itself in a multiplicative way, in an additive way, and so on. So you could copy it to the swap image. Let's say image, copy to swap, and then click here, this big thumbnail here to combine the two together. Right click it to say how you want to combine it. Is it additive? That will make it some places really bright. And then you could flatten it, merge down, right? Merge with swap rather. So that's a couple of other ways to work with that. And let's say I want to undo that and go back to this one, and perhaps add now a couple of stars. So obviously we should have a few stars here or there. One easy way to paint them is on the right click on the brush there. The simple or rather the organic effects have a couple of starry, there's a starry preset. Now it's usually too dense, so you'll want to increase the step distance here, right, so that you only get a few. That's still too dense. And there's also a little bit too transparent. I want a bit more brightness on these few stars. So I'm going to go even more expanded on the distance there, and then do just a couple. Click a few, drag a few, and do a couple of these stars. Now they're all appearing the same size, so I'm going to also undo that and add some randomness to the brush. So go to the settings for your brush. Make sure you're still on the brush here. Get the brush settings. Pin this down if you need this a few times, and then give it random. There's some parameters here for the size, but also size based on the speed, and then the random position you could make bigger, random size in particular here, so that it doesn't show each star the same. And so now you have a variety of stars, and they should be foreground stars, so they should appear pretty bright. However, you might not want that many. And you also might want to have just a few here or there. Perhaps random hue as well. Here, try that, because some of the stars should have slightly different coloration. More of a reddish tint, some more of a bluish. And then, of course, we need a couple of bright ones. Bright shiny stars with the lens flare effects. Right click on the gradient tool here where you have the lens flares. And for that, what we will do is we'll get a couple of the quiet ones, like this guy here. Put it right there. So that's a reddish one. Maybe another reddish one for a double star system here. This guy too. Right? Maybe a bluish. Twin stars often have a red giant and a blue dwarf star. There's probably some more magic we can have. This one here is a big bright sunny star, and this one of my favorites if you want those lens flare reflections. Look at that. Ain't it beautiful? Ain't Mother Nature so perfect? Alright, so that's it for this quick getaway. Grab on, hold on to your space rockets and explore the universe. Thanks to Project Dog Waffle, and we'll see you next time.